The schedules of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, and the Detroit Pistons are out, and you thought that y'all are going to have to wait until October to listen to this podcast again? Oh, no, sir. For the first time since April 30th, we are going to talk Cavs, Kings, and now Pistons basketball as the schedules for those three teams are released. I'm going to give you the stats of the schedule and talk about some marquee matchups. So for the first time since April 30th, Cavs, Kings, and now Pistons fans, let's freaking ride! And now, ladies and gentlemen, in the place to be, it is that time for the post-game reaction podcast to the Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, and the Pistons from the D. This is Let 'Em Know Kings in the 3, 1, 3. We're back! What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Let 'Em Know Kings in the 3, 1, 3. This, of course, is your post-game reaction podcast of the Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, and now the newest team in my podcast family, the Detroit Pistons, and I'm going to get into why I became a fan of the Detroit Pistons in just a second when I talk about the schedule of the Pistons. Before I get into that, I'm your host, Skylar Weisberg. Thank you so much for tuning in to Let 'Em Know Kings in the 313. I am a huge Cleveland Cavalier and Sacramento Kings fan, as well as a fan of the Detroit Pistons since my childhood. Before I get into the schedule, I would like to let you know that you can follow Let 'Em Know Kings in the 313 on Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, and Pandora. You can also follow the show on the website that I gotta look into. I think it's anchor.fm/CLESK313. I gotta check, but I think it's anchor.fm/CLESK313. I gotta double check. But anyway, you can download the Spotify for Podcasters app as well on your iTunes or Google Play stores, and you can give Let 'Em Know Kings in the 313 a follow on those specific platforms that I just mentioned. You can also turn on your notifications so you know about the next episode, which will likely be October 24th, when I give you a preview of the opening day games for the Cavs, Kings, and Pistons, because the Cavs open their schedule on the 25th against the Brooklyn Nets in Brooklyn. Detroit will have to go to Miami, and then Sacramento will play on Utah. All of them will be on the road, but there is a lot more juicy details about the schedule that I'm going to get into on this episode, so you better stay tuned for all of that. If you could do me one quick favor, please rate, spread the word out to your friends about Let 'Em Know Kings in the 313. Spread this to any Cleveland, Sacramento, or Detroit Pistons fan anywhere that you can find them. It's not just in Cleveland, Sacramento, or Detroit. Hey, there's a lot of NBA fans everywhere, and I would appreciate if you give this show a follow, spread the word out to your friends, and give Let 'Em Know Kings in the 313 a 5-star review. I would truly appreciate it. Let's not waste any more of your darn time, because the NBA schedule is out, y'all. NBA basketball is back in this bitch, and I really love to see it. The first team that we gonna talk about is the Cleveland Cavaliers, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the schedule has been released for the land. The season will tip off on a Wednesday, October 25th, when they travel to Barclays Center to take on the Brooklyn Nets. The last time the Cleveland Cavaliers played in Brooklyn, you know what happened. Isaac Okoro dripping with ice in the left corner for the game winner. Come on now. Come on now. And then they have a home opener back-to-back inside Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse on Friday, October 27th against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the OKC Thunder, my brother's team. And then Bruce Brown and Tyrese Halliburton and the improved Indiana Pacers are coming to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse on Friday, October 27th, and Saturday, October 28th. Now, there's going to be there's not just NBA League Pass or Bally Sports Ohio for those of you that are following the Cleveland Cavaliers on that channel. By the way, I encourage everybody that is listening to this to subscribe to NBA League Pass. That way you can follow the Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, and the Detroit Pistons out of market games wherever you are in the United States or around the world. And of course, if you are in a local area, you'll have to find the Pistons, Cavs, and the Kings local channels. But the only games that I will not be watching, I'm going to tell y'all right now, I will not be watching the Cavs, Kings, and Pistons against the New York Knicks, because that will be a really difficult game for me to do a podcast on. So it's going to be a little difficult for me to get that episode out to you guys. I'll be doing the highlight portion, but enough of that. Let's get right into the national TV, because the Cavs will be making 17 appearances on national TV, y'all. That's right, 3 games on TNT, including October 31st, Halloween, against the New York Knicks, and I cannot wait for that matchup. I cannot wait to see the New York Knicks get absolutely tricked by Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and of course, Strus is on the loose. That's right, y'all. We got Max Strus from Miami heading in to the 216 in Cleveland. I am excited for that. And then we travel on the road to take on the Philadelphia 76ers on November 21st and February 1st against the Memphis Grizzlies. By that time, Ja Morant will most likely be back. 6 games on ESPN will feature January 17th versus Milwaukee at home, February 14th against Chicago at home, February 23rd against Philadelphia in Philadelphia, March 3rd at home against the New York Knicks, March 10th at home against Brooklyn, and April 3rd against KD and the Phoenix Suns. 8 games will be available on NBA TV, including November 11th at Golden State, December 14th against Boston, December 16th versus Atlanta, December 29th against Milwaukee, January 11th in Brooklyn, which will happen in Paris. Mark the time note, y'all, 2 p.m. Eastern on January 11th. That is breaking news on Let 'Em Know Kings in the 313. March 29th at home against Philadelphia, and March 31st at Denver, and then of course November 13th against the Beep Team of Sacramento. Highlights of the other games in the schedule will include a pair against the Eastern Conference champion Miami Heat, a visit from the NBA champion Denver Nuggets on November 19th, November 22nd, and March 20th will be at home against Miami. Cleveland will also host the Chicago Bulls for a special MLK Day game on January 15th. Additional marquee opponents will come to the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse only once this season, include the Golden State Warriors on November 5th, the LA Lakers on November 25th, the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama on January 7th, and the Phoenix Suns on March 11th, as well as the Memphis Grizzlies on April 10th. But I think if the Cleveland Cavaliers would qualify for the playoffs, which I think this team will be capable of making the playoffs, then all the starters will be resting at that point. But why am I getting so far ahead? I don't really know. But also, as I mentioned before, the Cleveland Cavaliers will be traveling to Paris to take on the Brooklyn Nets at Accor Arena for the franchise's first ever game in Europe and 3rd internationally played game in franchise history. They traveled for preseason action in Brazil in 2015 and China in 2007, but this will be the first game in franchise history for the Cleveland Cavaliers in Europe in the regular season. Other stats in the schedule: the Cleveland Cavaliers will have a 5-game homestand over 9 days from November 22nd through the 30th, so a lot of home cooking. 2 of Cleveland's 4 in-season tournament games will take place at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. And speaking of the in-season tournament, here's how it's going to go down. November 3rd at Indiana, November 17th against Detroit, November 21st against Philadelphia, and November 28th against Atlanta. The knockout rounds will consist of single elimination games in the quarterfinals December 4th and 5th in the NBA market, semifinals on December 7th, and the championship on December 9th. The semifinals and the championship will take place inside T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. All in-season games will count toward the regular season standings except for the championship game. The losing teams in the quarterfinals in each conference will play each other in a regular season game on December 8th. Each of the 22 teams that do not advance to the quarterfinals in the in-season tournament will be assigned 2 regular season games, 1 home game and 1 away game that will be played on Wednesday, December 6th and Friday, December 8th. So we're going to see how the in-season tournament will play out, all right? The longest road trip for Cleveland will span 5 games in 8 days from March 31st through April 7th. There are national holiday games, including Halloween against New York, Veterans Day at Golden State, Thanksgiving Eve, November 22nd against the Miami Heat at home. Golden State will be on the road. New Year's Day against the Toronto Raptors on the road. January 15th on MLK Day against Chicago. And if you are part of the Chicago Bulls, you better be aware of Donovan Mitchell, because we do not, if you're from Chicago, you do not want to see Spider drop another 71-point performance. If you're a Cleveland Cavalier fan, you better believe that you want to see Donovan Mitchell drop a 71-point marker on your ass, but we ain't going to get to that right now. Valentine's Day against the Chicago Bulls. How ironic. It's Cleveland and Chicago every time. I don't get it. But they have an Easter game as well against the reigning defending champions, the Denver Nuggets. And 2 matinee home games this season. Victor Wembanyama will visit the Cleveland Cavaliers on January 7th on Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and April 14th against the Charlotte Hornets. The Cleveland Cavaliers will also play 17 games in March, the most on any months during the 2023-24 season. They will play 4 games in October, 15 whopping games in November, 13th in December, 13 games in January, 13 games in February, and 7 games in April. But here is another factor for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Can they stay healthy? I just found out from NBA Today on ESPN that the Cleveland Cavaliers will have 108 days of rest in between opponents, or their opponents, will have 108 days of rest before they face the Cleveland Cavaliers. What does that mean? Well, that means there's going to be a lot of injury concerns. There's going to be a lot of back-to-backs. The Cleveland Cavaliers might be tired. So my key is for the Cavs this season to stay healthy for most of the year. Limit the big injuries of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, please. We do not want Evan Mobley to be injured. And I want to see some of the new guys get into the action. We got Max Strus. We got Georges Niang. We also got Damian Jones as a center. So Cleveland is going to be a really fun team to watch. And I cannot wait for October 25th, y'all. I cannot wait for October 25th for the Cavs to come back. Speaking of October 25th, the team that was on the rise last year shook up the NBA world. And of course, I am talking about the Sacramento Kings. We're going to break down their schedule right after this break on Let 'Em Know Kings in the 3, 1, 3. We're back on Let 'Em Know Kings in the 313. Thank you so much for tuning in as we continue to talk about the schedules. We already talked about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now we are going to talk about a team that lit the NBA on fire last year. The number 1 scoring offense in the NBA with the reigning, defending, undisputed, unanimous Coach of the Year in Mike Brown. Of course, I am talking about the Sacramento Kings, which basically have everybody back. I'm talking about that dude, De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, and of course you got Domantas Sabonis. You also got Sasha Vezenkov from overseas, who is a 3-point sniper that will make a really big difference in the offensive department. And then you also got Malik Monk, who's coming back, Davion Mitchell, who's coming back. You got Chris Duarte, who is a sleeper pickup for the Sacramento Kings. So I'm really impressed for the offseason that the Sacramento Kings had. And of course, you got the executive of the year in Sacramento in Monte McNair. But I do have one thing to say. And I'm talking to you, Richard Jefferson. Yeah, Richard Jefferson, I'm talking to your ass, because you had the Houston Rockets as the team to watch over the Sacramento Kings, over the number one offense in the NBA last year, over Mr. Fourth Quarter in De'Aaron Fox. Wow. That's what we doing? That's what we doing, son? That's what we doing? I don't want to hear any words that come out of your mouth. I do not want to hear any words that come out of your mouth. Rather than, say it with me now, Kings fans, you already know, light the beam, okay? Because this Sacramento Kings team is ready to make some noise this year. I know a lot of people are going to say the reigning, defending, undisputed NBA champion, the Denver Nuggets, will be dominant this year. And they will. They will be dominant because they got Murray and the Joker, the 3-time MVP. I don't give a damn if Joel Embiid won the MVP. Nikola Jokic is the true MVP in the NBA. Screw Joel Embiid, but nevertheless, a lot of people might say the Phoenix Suns could be dominant. Yes, they could, because they got Kevin Durant. A lot of people also think the Lakers will be up there because of LeBron James. But let's be honest, the Lakers and the Kings do not like each other. Let's put that conversation into bed, okay? I do not want to hear talk about the Los Angeles Lakers winning the Pacific Division this year, because the Sacramento Kings, the reigning, defending Pacific Division champs, will win the division again in 2023-2024. Excuse my energy this episode, but I am hyped up AF because of the schedule being released out. They open up the regular season Sacramento on Wednesday, October 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where they take on the Utah Jazz, but they return to the Golden One Center on ESPN, a national televised game. And guess who they gonna face? Guess who they gonna face, ladies and gentlemen? I am talking about the Golden State Warriors on Friday, October 27th, 10 p.m. Eastern, ESPN. It is definitely going to be a feel-good Friday, and I said it before. On the Sports Roundup podcast. The Warriors and the Kings was the best damn playoff series in the NBA playoffs last year. Do not even get me riled up. Do not say that the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat was the most entertaining. Hell no, it was not. Do not tell me that the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers were the most entertaining series in the Eastern Conference. No, it was not. Do not even get me started on the Lakers and the Grizzlies, because you know that LeBron James made the Memphis Grizzlies look like bitches up in that court. Sorry for the language, but you better excuse my damn energy, alright? But the way that the Kings schedule break down things like this, they have 3 games in the month of October, 14 games in the month of November, total games to be decided but 12 games in total. So technically 14 games in the month of December, 15 total in January. In February they will have 12. Of March, they will have 16 total, especially with 11 of those games at home. So you gonna have a lot of games at home come March, Golden One Center, which, by the way, is the loudest arena in all of the NBA. I gotta keep that straight up, and I gotta keep that a buck. And then 8 games in April to round out the season. And the schedule will break down just like this. They have 12 Monday games, games, 11 Tuesday games, 16 Wednesday games. Thursday, we'll have 8 games. Friday, 14 games, 8 on Saturday, and 11 on a Sunday. The Kings' 2 longest homestands will each feature 6 games. December 14th through December 23rd, when they take on the Oklahoma City Thunder, Washington Wizards, Boston Celtics. That will be a really key matchup in the Golden One Center. Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns will be in the building December 22nd. 2 days before Christmas, they take on the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then Thursday, March 7th through Monday, 18th, hosting the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama. Houston, March 10th. Milwaukee, March 12th, another marquee matchup. The Lakers on March 13th. The Knicks on March 16th. And the Grizzlies on March 18th. And the longest road trip for the Sacramento Kings will feature 7 games through January 25th to February 5th against the Golden State Warriors, January 25th. I am excited to see that one. The Dallas Mavericks on January 27th, Memphis January 29th, Miami on January 31st, Indiana on February 2nd, the Bulls on February 3rd, and the Cleveland Cavaliers on February 5th. But the thing that I am mostly excited about, the Sacramento Kings this year, they will have 22. Let me repeat that number in case some of y'all didn't hear me from the back. 22 games will be on national TV. First of all, to the schedule makers, let's fucking go! We finally got exposure for the Sacramento Kings on national TV, and you'll love to see it. 5 games on ESPN, 2 home and 3 away. 6 on TNT, 4 at home and 2 away, and 11 on NBA TV, 10 at home and 1 away. But it don't matter. But it don't matter about NBA TV because all that matters is ESPN and TNT are finally going to make some exposure. They are finally going to learn to put some respect on the Beam team. They're going to have to learn to put some respect on the Sacramento Kings, all right? Because the last time the Sacramento Kings had at least 5 games on ESPN and 6 games on TNT was 2006 and 2007. Sacramento's 41 game home schedule will feature 16 weekend contests at Golden One Center, and the Kings will open the season versus the Jazz for the 3rd time in franchise history, and the Kings have an 18-20 record in season openers during the Sacramento era. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, you better know. You better take notes. You better read the scouting report. You better learn the roster of the Sacramento Kings because, ladies and gentlemen, the new Kings of the West, no pun intended, will reign in Sacramento this year because they have the roster, they have the offense, they have the loaded weapons to run it back and win the West again. I want to see the Sacramento Kings improve on defense, but as far as the schedule, I am not going to complain because everybody wants to know what the Sacramento Kings are all about. But here's a spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen. This year, the Sacramento Kings will light the beam again. Last year, the Kings were the 3rd seed in the NBA playoffs. I think I see this Sacramento Kings team go to the number 1 or the 2 seed in the NBA playoffs this year. Of course, you got to face Golden State. Of course, you got Phoenix to worry about. Of course, you got what's another good team? You got Denver to worry about, but there's no other team that is more competitive, that is more fun to watch than the Sacramento Kings. And ladies and gentlemen, I am all here for it. We're going to take one more break. I let them know Kings in the 3-1-3. When we come back, we are going to be talking about the Detroit Pistons schedule and my reaction to that matchup and why I became a Detroit Pistons fan to begin with. That is coming up right after this. We're back on Let 'Em Know Kings in the 3-1-3. We've been talking about the schedule reveals of the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Sacramento Kings, and now I'm here to talk about a team that is near and dear to my heart. A team that inspired me to watch the game of basketball ever since my childhood. And of course, I am talking about the Detroit Pistons. Now, before I talk about the schedule for the Pistons, allow me to tell each and every one of you that are listening to this show right now why I became a Detroit Pistons fan. Well, when I was a little kid, I think third or fourth grade, I used to have corrective surgery on both of my legs. And I remember days after I've been in the hospital, I was at home with my dad in my living room in Watchung, New Jersey, and we turned on the NBA Finals in 2004. The matchup in question was Kobe Bryant, the late great Kobe Bryant, and Shaquille O'Neal and the LA Lakers taking on Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Big Ben Wallace, my favorite Piston of all time, and the Detroit Pistons. But there was a guy that inspired me to be a public address announcer. For those of you that may or may not know, I spent my time outside the podcasting world as the PA announcer for my high school. And there was a guy by the name of John Mason, aka Mason, who is still doing Detroit Pistons basketball games to this day. And he inspired me to be a PA announcer, and that's why I got hooked to the Detroit Pistons. Now, I haven't been watching Detroit for the last couple of years because I wasn't into basketball after the 2004 NBA Finals, but I got into NBA basketball last year when I was watching Cleveland and Sacramento. But last year, the Pistons didn't have a really good year. They had probably one of the worst years in Detroit Pistons basketball history with a 17-65 record, but they have a young core in Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, who have been lighting it up. They also got Ausar Thompson, the number 5 pick in the NBA draft recently, and they also got a new head coach by the name of Monty Williams, and they are going to open the 2023-24 season on the road against the Miami Heat on October 25th. That will become the new normal of the Detroit Pistons because they have opened the regular season at home at Little Caesars Arena for the past 3 years. The team's home opener will take place on October 28th against the Bulls of Chicago. And a noteworthy of departure from the norm is the Pistons rostering of only 4 national television games this season. So much unlike Cleveland and Sacramento, the Detroit Pistons are getting like a lot of less exposure this season. And they will have the first 3 games on NBA TV with the final game on ESPN. November 29th, I should say, will be the initial televised match against the LA Lakers in Detroit. And then they will take on the Utah Jazz December 21st and the Boston Celtics on December 28th. And the final televised game will be brother versus brother, Ausar Thompson versus Amen Thompson, as the Pistons will take on the Houston Rockets at Little Caesars Arena. Upon first glance, the Pistons schedule reveals several intriguing facts. They are slated to play 15 sets of back-to-back games this season, tying with the Cleveland Cavaliers. On November 5th and 6th, the Pistons will host the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors, and this holds special significance because the Golden State Warriors will be a little bit of revenge game for James Wiseman, and November 5th, Monty Williams will be coaching against his former team. That's right, the Monty Williams became the head coach of the Detroit Pistons after being with the Phoenix Suns for the last couple of years, led the Phoenix Suns in the NBA Finals and all of that good stuff. So look, this is going to be a learning curve for me. This is going to be a learning curve for me, returning to the team that I've loved since childhood, when they had arguably the greatest starting five in the modern era of the Detroit Pistons. Chauncey, Mr. Big Shot Billups, Richard Rip Hamilton, Rasheed Wallace, Tayshaun the Palace Prince, and Ben Wallace. Do not even get me started doing the Mason impersonations again. But it is going to be really cool for me to see my childhood team in a new era led by head coach Monty Williams. Now, I will say this. I do not see the Detroit Pistons making the NBA playoffs this year. I know it's crazy for me to doubt a team for the 3-1-3, but I think Monty Williams will establish a culture and a standard in Detroit, so much so that I think with the talent that they have, of course I'm talking about Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, the talent young core, Ausar Thompson, and a returning Cade Cunningham, who's been balling in the offseason. I think this Detroit Pistons team might be capable of a play-in team this season. They could make some noise in the NBA in-season tournament as well. So it is going to be a really fun year for the Detroit Pistons. Do I see them in the playoffs? Not necessarily, but again, I could see them as a play-in team this year. As far as Cleveland and Sacramento, definitely playoffs, more Sacramento than Cleveland, but nevertheless, yes, this is going to be a really fun season. I cannot wait to talk NBA basketball with you, especially the Cleveland Cavaliers, Detroit Pistons, and the Sacramento Kings. So if you haven't seen Let Them Know Kings in the 3-1-3 before, y'all better get ready, because come October 25th, basketball is back. But October 24th, we are going to preview the opening day matchups as the Cleveland Cavaliers will open their season against the Brooklyn Nets. The Detroit Pistons will open their season in the 305 against the Miami Heat, and the Sacramento Kings will open their season against the Utah Jazz. All of those games will be on the road. That's going to do it for this edition of Let 'Em Know Kings in the 3-1-3. You can find this show on Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Pandora, and Anchor.fm/CLESK313. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app on your iTunes, Google Play stores. Give the show a follow on those platforms. Turn on your notifications so you know about the next episode. Please rate, spread the word out to your friends, and give this show a 5-star review. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Skylar Weisberg, and I will see you October 24th for an opening day preview edition of Let 'Em Know Kings in the 3-1-3.